What's a red flag when looking for a job? Earning potential is stress over current salary. If the job description has about 20 items of which one is sales, your job is going to be sales. We work hard and play hard. It actually means all work and for sure no play. Initially unpaid, but will result in full-time offer upon completion of ZIS. Master's degree preferred for an entry-level job. High staff turnover. Making jokes about overtime and crunch time. Guaranteed it's going to be a nights and weekends are optional, but not actually optional. Place. I got a call from a Subway I applied to telling me my interview was in 10 minutes. That was the first I heard from them after submitting my application. When they had talked previous employees, they're going to do it to you. Always ask them why the person you are replacing left the job. The way they answer this could be a red flag. Hiring lots of people on the same position. Everyone who calls gets a job. Often means the job is either bullet or they're setting you all up to compete for the actual job. We are a family here, which means this is how they try to make up for the itty pay and long hours. A former co-worker shared this tidbit with me years ago and it works wonders. Try to schedule your in-person interview as late in the afternoon as possible. Relevant to your position. If you're expecting a 9-5 job, schedule your interview for 4 o'clock or 4:30. You probably discussed after hours work etc during the interview. When you are done, you should be able to look around. Are people still working? Is the parking lot empty? You can match up the evidence with what was claimed during the interview and from that, judge how realistic the entire job description is based on how they treated the after hours work. This was a red flag I had during an interview process once. I was doing a phone interview for an IT position and the person I was interviewing with basically changed the details of the job during the interview. Instead of the first shift hours the position promised, he immediately went into saying it would be 6+ months before the opportunity for first shift would even be a possibility. Also, he was big into asking how dedicated I was to jobs. The idea of weekend shifts, again, not in the original description, kept coming up, and how everyone had to be a team player and help out on weekends when needed. The kicker was when he started talking about how many hours he worked. He was bragging that he was up at 6 AM every day working. Then he'd go into the office for the day, come home to see his family for dinner, and get right back to work until 10 to 11 PM every night. I had never been turned off from a job faster in my life. He asked me to think things over and he'd send me some paperwork via email. Needless to say, I called him the next morning and declined the job. It was the worst interview process I'd ever been in. Couple of things. Open interviews. Admittedly, I've fallen for this a few times, but I was young and stupid. It's clear they have a high turnover, so they're trying to secure as many people as they can. Most of the time these open interview jobs don't have salaries, just commission, refusal or reluctancy to share details over the phone. This is what usually ends up in you turning up to an open interview. If they withhold information about the role, what you'll be doing etc., that's a huge red flag. They just want to get you in the door for an interview to pressure you into joining. Job description. You will be in charge of the online marketing. Because of that, we expect that you will also be the web developer, Photoshopper, community manager, coffee maker and e-sucker. That kind of crap will tell you if the business understands the role they are looking to fill or are just expecting some kind of magical entity that will do everything online related by himself. Arrived for an interview not too long ago. Showed up 15 minutes early and had all my certs to prove training. Waited over 20 minutes before the secretary led me to a conference room. Waited another 40 minutes and got fed up. Quality manager walked in as I was getting up to leave. He was very offended when I told him he had wasted my time and I would never accept a position after being left to wait almost an hour while having an appointment. Any job that requires an upfront cost. This is a telltale sign that you are getting wrapped up into a MLM pyramid scheme. If you ask them what the pay is and they start off with what you could be making after so much time and they start rambling about the raise process, run the other way. Manager who doesn't really interview you or who doesn't take the interview seriously. They are on their phone the whole time. Don't ask any questions. A too casual. Edited. Too casual doesn't mean creating a relaxed environment or rapport with interview candidate. Too casual, in my experience, was the guy, director of marketing, wear jeans with a hole near the crotch and sitting with his legs open, on his phone the whole time, spitting chew into a can on his desk. Or the guys who have interviewed me and littered the interview with F-bombs and other vulgarities. Or talked it about our known common acquaintances. Things like that. Looking for rock stars in the job description. Unless of course the posting is in fact for a position to be a rock star. I turned down a second interview for a position in which the interviewer said something to the effect of, if your boss emails you on a Friday night, you don't have to respond. But you know how that looks. Made it pretty clear that they expect work to be your first priority. For me, when they do open interviews, lol. An employer who treats you like they are doing you a favor. With good servant leadership, it should be the other way around. An unclear job description, or a job description that includes too many duties, not being offered the opportunity to see the working areas or talk to people who would be your peers, just generally trying to feel out whether or not they have things under control or not. I don't want to walk into a RedditJar show when they say you could be earning 6 figures in less than a year. Family owned and operated. The family members will not be held to the same standards as you. Requires 10 years experience. 2 master's degrees. Start. 8.50 hours. I had a team lead interview me for a contract once say bluntly, "You don't want to work here, it's horrible." He was right and still undersold the experience somehow. You walk in and none of the employees greet you, if not outright ignore you. You realize it's a very cliquey place. Duck office politics. Places who always say they're hiring and always taking applications, but you never actually see anyone new being trained or anything. It means people are quitting constantly and management isn't hiring new people. So they are critically understaffed on top of poorly managed. I interviewed for a company that had a recruiter after me pretty hard. The company was just moving into my market and the reviews on Glassdoor definitely mentioned people being frustrated with the bro culture. All of my interviews were over FaceTime, with the managers showing up in their pajamas from home and admitting that since the company is still growing, the workload was pretty much 7 days a week until you got your new team hired and running. It just wasn't very professional and it was obvious they didn't have structure or care about people's time. I also don't trust companies that brag about things like Nerf gunfights around the office and constant happy hour events. Those perks are fun, but it's clear when that's all they talk about in the job posting that they're trying to distract you from other issues. I need to see that your company culture is enriching and creates success, not free lunches. This is the biggest red flag of them all. More than "Hey sweaty AO, I have an amazing business opportunity for you. How would you like to be your own boss or the CEO of your own company, are copywriting and become a millionaire just from working on your circumflex Y with diaresis A diaresis copywriting. It's so easy. All you have to do is trick other people into joining your team AO and they will do all the work for you while you take most of their profits. So what do you say? Insert victim's name here. Wanna join my team? It's only $499.99 for a starter pack. You gotta spend our copyright to make our copyright INR registered sign. I can think of a few specific examples. A. When I was younger, I was in between my dad's house and my eventually wife, and then ex-wife's parents' house. Kind of living both places, but I was transitioning to move in with her family. We lived about 50 minutes apart. She stayed with me on occasion at my dad's. 2. This all becomes relevant. I applied at the McDonald's in her town just trying to do anything. Well, I got a call one morning at 7 AM. MCD manager says interview in 25 minutes. We were at my dad's and that call woke me up. So I told him, look, I'm almost an hour away, there's no way I make that. He said, then I guess you don't want the job that badly. Today me would have told him to jog off. But back then me jumped in the shower and together me and my ex-lady sped 120 through country roads and somehow managed to make it just in time. I gave my best damn interview. He never called me back. B. A job for online Apple tech support through a third party working from home. In the interview they told me they'd send me a Mac to work from and a phone to use. I was a little smarter than me in example A, so I had questions. My main red flag popped when she said you're responsible for the equipment and the cost of any repairs if it breaks. Okay, makes sense. But I asked, are these new devices? She danced around the question, but I was persistent. Finally she said no, they're refurbished. So my next question was, so if you send this Mac to me and day 2 it stops working because of some non-damage issue, do I still have to pay the repair? Yeah, apparently I would, and these suckers are not cheap. After that she said, I don't know if this job is right for you because I ask strong questions to see if I could get ducked over by you guys. Yeah, maybe not. TL. Dr. McManager on a power trip didn't even call me back after I went double the speed limit to make his outrageous time demand. And sketchy work from home job wanted to give me possibly janky hardware and then charge me if it stopped working. Got defensive when I asked if that was really the case. If the offices are at whole bathrooms are dirty. TL. DR. Cheap ass owner. This is kind of an odd one. But here is what happened to me. I left a decent size, 400 employee, successful company because my career path was dead-ended. I had 2 positions above me. One was my boss, who was not going to retire for 20 years, and the VP, who was above him and also not going anywhere for 10 years or more. Took a job at a much smaller company, 70 employees, but it had a ton of growth potential. It was a small company on the verge of blowing up and getting big. I didn't pay a ton of attention to my surroundings because I was too excited about more money, growth, etc. The offices were a dump and the bathrooms were disgusting. There were 2 reasons for this. First, the company was small and growing and somewhat cash poor. Second, the owner was cheap as duck. In my time there, he would frequently make comments like offices don't make me money, and bathrooms don't make me money, which, on the surface, is true. However, people don't like working a dump. I had a job in IT and we would end up cleaning the bathrooms on a rotation. I'm not above scrubbing a toilet, but no one told me when I was hired that I'd have to wipe up piss. I might have reconsidered taking that job. Over the next couple of years, the company did grow and they did hire a cleaning company and they did invest in the offices. But the first 12 months or so were not entirely what I expected, especially coming from a company that prided itself on nice, clean, modern facilities. I will say this though, the owner's cheap mentality was a continual roadblock for me in my time there. I eventually became director of operations and it was a constant challenge to deal his step over a dollar to pick up a dime methods. Here are some examples of his idiocy. Only the owner, the VP, and the financial guy were allowed to have company credit cards. I was a director of operations with 65 employees under me and I had to get petty cash from accounting or use my own credit card and get reimbursed for any events spending meals. Most people were not allowed to book their own flights. It wasn't until later on that I was able to book my own flights. The entire purchasing department and none of the sales force were allowed to book their own flights. The owner did it, and if he could save $60 by adding 2 layovers or making your flight a red eye, he would do it. Never mind the lost productivity and what that costs. We saved $60 on your ticket. Kept an opiate addict around because he was a good welder and carpenter and would build anything the owner wanted on the weekend for $60. A pack of smokes, and a case of beer. The addict regularly destroyed equipment, stole, lied, and worked whatever hours he wanted. When my predecessor tried to fire him, the owner overruled, and after that the addict could basically do whatever he wanted because there were clearly no repercussions. I did eventually fire this guy and I still have the voicemail saved where he called up and begged for his job back after he had threatened violence against me and vandalism against my property. We had a plow truck that was in need of a wiring harness. The addict employee mentioned above had done something while borrowing the truck with the owner's permission and the truck caught on fire. The truck was an older V30 Chevy truck, but it was in decent shape and worked well. I ordered a wiring harness from Painless and figured I'd install it on a weekend and get the truck working again for $600. The owner traded that truck and $5,000 for a 2002 F255.4 XL regular cab with 275,000 miles on it. The Super Duty frame and suspension were completely rotten and the truck needed a rear end, brakes, brake lines, and fuel lines in the first year. I'm sure the guy that made that trade laughed all the way to the bank, coming away with $5K and a clean square body Chevy 1-ton that had an SM 465, NP 205, 14 bolt, Dana 60, and only needed a wiring harness to be back on the road. I wasn't allowed to hire a lawn care company to do the mowing, so we had to have employees do it. The owner bought a used $400 riding mower that had 4 flat tires, no belts, and no battery from, you guessed it, the addict guy. I was not allowed to have a company credit card, but I did have a company Lowe's card. So I bought a cheap push mower over there and we used that to mow until years later when I was allowed to hire a mowing company. When looking at compensation figures, bear in mind that up to X includes the number 0. If you're the kind of person who likes a 9-5 job, this may not be right for you. If you are expected to work right off without sufficient training, it reflects poorly on the company's management and likely also means that they don't care about the employees. I think it's a weird question to ask a prospective employer, but an important one. What are your company values? It's kinda like asking on a first date your date's life philosophy, but man, it becomes evident when a company has no values, and if you don't have anything to strive for other than a dollar, your employees won't last. Unfortunately, I have worked for a couple of places that hired roughly 75 plus people 3 times per week at several locations just to keep up with turnover. If the job asks for money to begin, we'll hide this behind, oh you know we just need $90 for the piss test and $180 for the marketing training. Definitely not talking from my scammed ass's personal experience. Reaching out to potential clients likely refers to cold calling. Duck that. If it feels like you have the job before your interview. I once applied to a trainee position. I got to the interview and it felt like I had already got the position and the meeting was just for details. It was weird. He looked at my docs more as a formality, but apart from the excessive praise, I was never actually asked anything. I was told I would do a week trial with only travel expenses paid. During that week there was no training or anything. I heard some not nice things, also some illegal things. Whilst there, the boss was making plans to go out of the country for an extended period within 2 months and I'd be taking over for him as well as expected to bring in clients too. Also, I wasn't deemed to be working fast enough and therefore they wanted to pay me less than you accrued for an hour. I didn't go back. Bullet job descriptions that are so vague they could be anything. We are family around here means they are ready to gaslight the living hell out of you. I saw a job posting last week in which one of the requirements was to keep your desk tidy. If they're willing to put that in the ad, the office is run by control freaks. Stay away. Long personality quizzes during the application. They're a huge red flag that the manager is incompetent. Test task that looks like real work they need to be done. If they ask you to pay for training, that's usually a red flag that it's a MLM or pyramid scheme. If they ask you to buy stuff on commission and then it's your job to resell it, big ol' red flag. I've had job interviews where the whole company gave me a weird vibe. Lots of psychology questions like do you like to be in control? While sitting in an office building with zero privacy. All of the offices had glass walls, so everyone could see everyone else. Needless to say, I didn't accept their offer. I was recently, roughly 2 months ago, given a job offer from a company I was really interested in. The job sounded great, was in a career path I was originally hoping for when graduating, and was back in my hometown so I could see some old friends and family regularly. When they made me an offer, it was a pretty big pay cut from what I'm currently making. Actual salary would have been flat out even. I hate my current job, so that would have been okay by me. However, I would be losing a week of vacation, a week of paid sick time, getting slightly worse benefits, and half of what my current company offers in 401k matching. When I asked what was available for negotiation, they got mad at me. In fact, they expected me to make this life-altering decision in 24 hours with little to no questions asked, and got even more mad that I wanted to negotiate my ducking life instead of just say yes or no. So, I ended up just walking away. I hate my current bosses, but not enough to walk away from 4 weeks of vacation and an extra week of sick leave, and especially not 4. Given the signs, people who will treat me the exact same way as my bosses. I had an interview once where the owner asked me how many sick days do you think is appropriate to take every year? I was kind of taken aback and said something like as many as you are actually sick. He looks me dead in the eye and says the average is 3. I knew it was a red flag, but I was desperate for a job at the time. Sure enough, it was the worst job I've ever had. He was a professional micromanager and treated everyone like we were idiots. This was a job that required a master's degree. I left for something much better 6 months later. Half the staff followed soon after. In the 90s, when restaurant job posts were in newspapers, I made sure to avoid those that seemed to have an annual subscription to the help wanted section. If they are always hiring, people are always leaving. I can get that with sales and marketing. But if you are burning through cooks and dishwashers every week, something must be amiss with management. Need someone who is a rock star in fill in the blank. Really? You want someone who is just charismatic? That's it? What does that even mean? Sure, I can do tons of sugar at work and be charismatic as hell. Doubt that would help your company. It's common in my industry for you to be interviewed separately by 3 or 4 different people. They will typically all be people that you will be working with or for example, the hiring manager and 2 teammates. I've taken to asking each of them to describe what they see as the day-to-day duties and priorities of the role. If they don't align, it's a warning sign that no one knows exactly what they're hiring for. When the principal reason for letting someone go was simply, they just didn't fit in here. You'll wear different hats in this role. First of all, this is a stupid ducking phrase. Secondly, you just mean you're going to make me do 6 different jobs and underpay me for them all. Spelling mistakes in the post. When they can't return a call or keep you updated about your onboarding. I arrived at a pharmacy for an interview. I asked to speak with the manager who had made the appointment with me. I waited 20 minutes before he came over and said he forgot about the interview. Asked me to email him a copy of my resume and have my last employer call him. I walked out of there with his card and threw it in the garbage. Job descriptions ending in and other duties as required. Some managers love to leverage that line as if by signing your contract you signed away your soul. You can go to anyone with questions. Equals we don't have enough formal training or good reference materials. So ask around and hope someone knows how to do the task you're assigned. Extremely short interviews and overly technical questions. I've been interviewed several times by tech companies that clearly didn't read my resume or just about anyone else's. They'll base too much on your current knowledge and certs instead of on your ability to learn and willingness for a job. Once had an interview last 15 minutes. No questions about prior experience. No specific questions about me. Set up the interview with the hiring company literally the day before. Asked about the specifics of how a TCP conversation worked. Seemed genuinely surprised when I couldn't remember one barely used flag. Felt like I was taking the CCNA all over again. Useless knowledge and all. And they scoffed every time I missed a question. No thank you at the end of the interview. No real signal that they cared about me at all. Next day I received an offer from a different company. Their interview was heavenly, and the day before that nightmare interview, they wanted to know about me, my motivations, interests, hobbies, and genuinely tried to get to know me and how I learn. They treat me so well and try to work with me on everything. I found out that the other company I had interviewed for was a failing sock lovingly known as a revolving door from friends and colleagues. We offer flexible hours. Means that you will never have a set, week-to-week schedule. You will never be able to make plans more than a week in advance. And you will probably get stuck with turnaround shifts, closing then opening. I was once called to arrange an interview for a job in the medical field, and the woman wanted me to show up for the interview without telling me what company it was, what was the job description etc. She told me we'll discuss during the interview and asked me to be in an address at a specific time 2 days later. It seemed way sketchy, and I had already a second interview somewhere and pretty sure I would get the job, so I cancelled this thing. To this day I wonder what that was about. Interviewer for an shift manager job at Wendy's asked me to quit college. Said I needed to always be available to them if they needed me. Never mind that he was over an hour late to my interview. No, I will not quit college for $9 an hour. If their office is pin drop quiet, not one person having a conversation or any chatting going on anywhere. Every time this has happened, it's become apparent everyone is afraid of one or two specific people in management and everyone is just browbeaten. When the company is very inefficient during the hiring process, it's time to back away. When the only people they have been with the company for ages and you're the only new guy, that probably means you're just looking at an old boys club and they're absolute beast to new employees and drive them away. If they're looking for a large number of people to fill multiple positions, typically means that something happened to make a lot of people quit, or means that company has a high turnover rate. I recall a woman in an interview telling me that the last employee left them in the lurch and she needed to fill the position immediately. She pressed me for a commitment before I was ready. We had only had a phone interview, so had never actually met. Plus I had a promising interview somewhere else and I was waiting to hear back. But I was desperate to get out of my current situation, so I took it. She turned out to be my worst employer so far in my career. At one point I tried to quit and she took me out to lunch and pressured me into staying. When I finally did quit, I did it by written note. Since I knew she would try to talk me out of it, I also immediately took my check to her bank to have it cashed. It turned out to be a smart move because she itched about me slamming my paycheck through at the bank when she called me in a rage after finding my note. She had contacted them to stop my paycheck, but it was too late. When you see a black leather couch in an empty room,